Hello, I'm Eunice Nyaga. Welcome and let us continue with Educational Psychology in TVET, Module 3, Topic 2, which is on theories of learning. During this session, we will focus on classical conditioning theory. Classical conditioning theory was developed by Ivan Pavlov. It states that a neutral stimulus brings about a response after being associated with a stimulus that already elicits the response. Let us now look at Pavlov's experiment with his dog. The experiment was in relation to his dog salivating at the smell or taste of food. In step 1, what he did was to bring a bowl of food and gave it to the dog. The dog salivated because it could smell the food. That was an unconditioned response because salivation is a normal physiological function. As human beings also, we salivate when we smell food. When someone is cooking and you smell good food from the kitchen, you feel hungry and you salivate. That is a normal natural phenomenon. It is instinctual. That is from natural instinct or stimulation. It happens naturally. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to make it happen. It just happens. So when the dog was served with food, it salivated. Every time when the dog was served with a bowl of food, it salivated. This showed an unconditioned response. In step 2, what he did was to bring a bowl of food where the dog was, but at the same time ring the bell. So in one hand, he had the food. On the other hand, he had the bell, which he would ring and the dogs would come because they could smell and then salivate. So he did that over time. This is not a few days, not a week, it is over a long time. Food and bell together. Normally, when anybody hears the bell, you don't salivate. But the bell and the food together, the two events happening simultaneously, the dog salivating prompted a new response in the animals. And that brings us to step 3. Now, he only rings the bell. Pavlov rang the bell and there was no food. The dogs came running and salivating because they were conditioned. The sound of the bell and salivation were conditioned. The dogs had learned that the bell means food, and now the bell was ringing and there was no food, but they were still salivating. Over time, if Pavlov had continued to ring the bell and bring no food, salivation would have stopped because the instinctual behavior of salivation has to do with food, not with the sound of the bell. But a very clear and strong point that was shown in Pavlov's study was that unrelated behaviors can trigger similar responses. There was no connection between the bell and salivation only. No connection. Yes, there was connection between the bell, the food, and salivation. But the bell and salivation only, no connection. Nobody salivates when the doorbell rings. It just doesn't happen. So it was shown that unrelated events can link and lead to a similar behavior, and if that behavior is to continue, you will have to reinforce and keep the bell and food going together. So you can try a few days with only the bell and no food. But then you must bring the bell, the food, Otherwise, the dog will forget that it was supposed to salivate at the sound of the bell. Salivating at the sound of the bell only was a behavior that the dog had learned. A normal, natural, instinctual behavior of salivating led to the dog salivating at the sound of the bell. Now, let us look at the principles of classical conditioning. The first principle is extinction. This is the disappearance of a learned response. For example, if a dog was conditioned to salivate in response to a bell ringing because it was previously paired with food, presenting the bell without providing food over time would lead to extinction. The dog would stop salivating in response to the bell. Next principle is spontaneous recovery. This is the reappearance of a previously extinguished conditioned response after a period of rest or time without exposure to the conditioned stimulus. For example, after the extinction process, if the bell is presented again to the dog, there might be a temporary return of the salivary response, even though it had previously been extinguished. The next principle is generalization. Generalization in classical conditioning occurs when an organism responds to stimuli that are similar to the conditioned stimulus with the same conditioned response. For example, if a dog has been conditioned to salivate in response to a specific tone, it may also salivate to similar tones or sounds, demonstrating a generalization of the learned response. And finally, discrimination. Discrimination involves the ability to differentiate between a conditioned stimulus and other stimuli that do not signal the presence of the unconditioned stimulus. For example, if a dog has learned to associate food with a specific bell tone, but not with other similar sounds, for example, whistling, it has discriminated between the conditioned stimulus and other irrelevant stimuli. The dog responds selectively to the specific conditioned stimulus that predicts the unconditioned stimulus. Now, pause and think about how you can apply classical conditioning theory in your training. Note down your points. Application number 1. Create an atmosphere that attracts trainees. Employ classical conditioning by associating positive and enjoyable elements with the learning environment. Make the training space comfortable, visually appealing, and conducive to learning. This positive atmosphere can create a positive emotional response, making trainees more receptive to the learning process. Reiterating the importance, a positive and appealing learning environment can significantly impact trainee engagement. This involves factors such as comfortable facilities, modern equipment, and supportive instructors. The aim is to condition trainees to associate the training environment with positivity, making learning more enjoyable. Next, use the principle of association to make trainees like subjects. Associate the learning content with positive experiences or emotions. Integrate interesting examples, real-world applications, or hands-on activities that make the subjects more engaging and enjoyable. By linking the subject matter with positive stimuli, trainees are more likely to develop a liking for the topics or courses. Next, avoid instilling unnecessary fear. Classical conditioning can inadvertently associate fear or anxiety with learning if instructors use punitive measures excessively. Instead, create a supportive and encouraging environment to promote positive associations with the learning process. Minimize unnecessary stressors to ensure trainees feel comfortable and open to learning. And finally, let every trainee experience success in something. Facilitate small victories and achievements for every trainee, for example, by filing difficult levels of activities based on student abilities step by step. Applying classical conditioning, associate the learning process with success and accomplishment. This positive reinforcement builds confidence and encourages a positive attitude towards learning, making trainees more motivated to tackle more challenging topics. We have come to the end of the session, and I hope you have understood about how classical conditioning works. The next session will be on operant conditioning theory by B.F. Skinner. Thank you.